you've obviously spent a good amount of time with him, and I think that one of the pieces that to me is very obvious is he one is misunderstood, two because he is so ambitious and believes so deeply that he and his team can drive so much innovation. It's an easy target to attack, both in the media, in private, etc. Maybe help us understand a little bit, as you've actually spent time with him, like what are your takeaways and kind of how do you evaluate both him as a person, but also to kind of those ambitions across SpaceX, Tesla, and then maybe we can get into some of the Hyperloop stuff after that.
Yeah. Well, my experience have been, incredibly meaningful. We've had some experiences like traveling together to Tahrir Square. He saw a trip that I did to Tahrir Square in the middle of the revolution, and then I went to Libya in the middle of the revolution. Same trip with Sean Penn, and we met with the rebels in Benghazi as they had liberated, like 2 weeks before Gaddafi was killed, and it was an incredible experience. And he was like, look, next trip you take like that, I want to go with you. And I was like, well, we're thinking about going to Cuba. And there was an American who was in prison for 8 years there. And we were like, maybe we can help with that. And so we're basically doing hostage negotiations, as Elon likes to tell it. And, we coordinated in terms of what our goals were, and said, and also the idea of like, helping to bring internet to the island. And we knew that bringing connectivity and communication to a country can really open things up. And so that was the trip, and it took 6 months to get the approvals. And Elon's jet was the second American plane to land in Cuba in 50 years. And so we landed there, and we met with ministers, and we met with university students. We, met with, Castro's son, like, with artists. And one of the things we said was like, look, you've got to release this American. There's nothing to talk about if you don't. And within a year, they released him, and then Obama opened up Cuba, and Rolling Stones came in for a free concert to 500,000 people. I mean, it affected change, right? And in that trip, and Elon said that was his favorite trip at the time, we started talking about on the plane, we started talking about Hyperloop. And I remember, everything kind of very clearly. And I remember saying, look, what are you going to do with it? This was an idea. The paper wasn't written. And what he said was, look, he's got 5 boys, SpaceX, Tesla, Solar City. He's super busy, and he didn't have time to do it. And he wanted to open source it anyway. So I said, do you mind if I try to, create a company around it? And he was like, no, go ahead. And my idea was, I didn't want to just do people transport. I wanted to revolutionize the idea of logistics, cargo, and commerce. And the idea was, imagine if you could order something, right, online, and it begins to be manufactured in real time, manufactured, distributed, and delivered all within 48 to 72 hours from anywhere in the world. Imagine that kind of real-time pulse to the global economy. And he was like, that's a really good idea, and I don't see any technical reason why you couldn't do people and cargo. So that was the business model, and I started to work on it. And one of the things to Elon is, one, he's an absolute genius. Two, he is incredibly loyal. I mean, he's a family person. He loves his family. He loves his close friends, and he's incredibly loyal to those people and to his teams that are building these incredible companies with him. And I saw multiple examples of that. And it was just, in every experience. There's a reason why people build great things with leaders and visionaries like that. They are inspired. They're inspired to do something more with their lives and to contribute something to the advancement of our world. There's nothing better than waking up in the morning and realizing all these years of work that you're sending two human beings into space on a private rocket. Like, come on. How cool is that?
Look, if you see the kind of hype video, if you will, that NASA and SpaceX released today, I mean, you watch this thing and you're like, again, I tweeted it a couple times. I don't know how you bet against these people, right? Whether it's Elon, whether it's the SpaceX team, whether it's NASA, just the fact that they have worked. And the part I actually wrote about this morning was this isn't something that they started working on 2 years ago, right? I mean, we're talking almost 20 years he's been working on this problem, and it started from a first principles standpoint. I got to fix this rocket technology, get the cost down. I have to kind of get cargo, and then I can get people. And this is a multi-decade type body of work that we're just now starting to see, I think, where people say, hey, wait, they actually may pull this off, right? But it's 20 years in the making. Yeah.
I mean, everyone is praying for the safe journey of the astronauts. That's incredibly important, obviously, to their families and to the movement of humanity expanding beyond our planet. I was telling that story of having a conversation with Elon in 2012 about astronauts going on in his rockets. And we were going to the opening ceremony of the Olympics in 2012, and we got stuck in traffic. We were going to be late, and we saw some bikes for rent. So we jumped out of the car and rented the bikes and biked and made it. But then my leg cramped as we were walking, running, and he put his arms around, supported me to walk to a bench, and then ran and got water because I was dehydrated, obviously. And we sat down, we talked, and I asked him about, when do you think humans will go on your rocket? And he was so thoughtful. His number one concern was the safety of the astronauts. That's all he was concerned about. He was projecting 2023, I think, and he beat that. But that was his paramount concern, nothing else. He wasn't trying to rush to get there and risk, anyone's life. And there's always some risk, no matter what you do. But it's also an important reminder that, look, we put humans on the moon in the 60s, right? I mean, wow. I mean, and Kennedy got up there and said, wanting to put a man on the moon within the decade. And they did it. And they did it with computers with the power of a calculator today. And it's an incredible achievement. But we should also understand that it wasn't just an engineering achievement. It was a financial achievement and decision. I think the numbers I saw once, I wrote about this once, about the actual in kind of 1960s dollars that they committed to fund putting a man on the moon within the decade was something like $250 billion, right? And it was something like 4 or 5% of the GDP at the time. And that's an incredible commitment and achievement. And so it's like, look, we've already done this. we have these skills. A private company hasn't done it. Our government and our people did it, but companies have that skill as well. And it's another area where I talk about companies becoming, almost like sovereigns, right? I call them mini sovereigns. And, Tim Cook of Apple has the power, and Apple has the power and financial power of a nation state. Amazon and Bezos, same thing. Google, right? And imagine in the SpaceX example, if Elon pulls it off and he colonizes Mars in the next 20, 30 years and begins to seed humanity there, which is absolutely his goal. Again, it sounds crazy, but that is his goal. And every crazy idea he's had, guess what? He did it. From PayPal to, to SpaceX, to Tesla, to Solar City, and so on. So, like you said, I wouldn't bet against that.